All right, everybody, I'm Ahab. That's the Goon Tick, and welcome to the 4th episode of Stephen King's Shit or Hit. But first, a word from our sponsor.
This episode is brought to you by Lips. Surprise, I have some.
That is shocking. That is shocking.
And they suck.
Once again, Lips pay us nothing.
It's true.
So we're still dirt poor. But
Especially
anyway.
because they're my lips and I have $0 to my name.
Today we're continuing the cavalcade of Stephen King movies. One, because that's the point of this particular series.
It's true.
But two, because we are, of course, in the renaissance of King movies. We're getting them like every second now. And the latest one is 1922, which is a Netflix original. So I guess by default this is also a Netflix Nuggets episode.
We're gonna have some crossovers here.
Tons of them. But yeah, 1922 is the most recent one. It came out just this Friday, October 20th. I guess a pre-Halloween treat, just like Babysitter was. And it's based on a novella, one of 4 in Stephen King's excellent novella collection. That's part of the course. I mean, it's usually what it is. Excellent novellas in every collection. But it comes from Full Dark No Stars. It is the first of 4 novellas. Interestingly enough, there's only one novella that hasn't been adapted in this thing, so that's pretty cool.
What are the other ones?
Good Marriage and Big Driver, which we will be visiting soon enough. But 1922, when I first read 1922, it's well held by a lot of Stephen King fanatics as one of his best novellas. So I was kind of anxious to see this movie. I was afraid that it was not going to live up to it. But 1922 is held in high regard by many. But for me, it holds a special place in my heart once because it has so much of what makes King good. You know, it's a very character-driven drama, first of all. It's a period piece, which is always lovely when he does those. And on top of that, it's a loving ode to a lot of stuff, you know. It's very reminiscent of Edgar Allan Poe's Telltale Heart, Rats in the Wall, stuff like that. It's also very much in the vein of Richard Matheson, especially stuff like Wet Straw. And it's told in an epistolary, confessionary style like H.P. Lovecraft. So it has a lot of all these elements. And on top of that, there's these these broad tones of like the EC Comics era, even painted onto the thing. So it's a great novella. Even if you see this movie, I recommend you go read the novella. But let's talk about it. Was this a good adaptation or not? Now we're gonna go in as we always do. I having read the piece, and you going in cold turkey. You're the general audience. You're the general response. So let's start it off like we always do. What's your overall response to this? Positive, negative, in the middle? What's up?
I really liked it.
I like how it's always like blank
that's the theme.
Expression.
I really liked it.
You could be like completely hateful towards. I really hated it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you really liked it. All right, cool.
I like it because of those reasons. Very Tales from the Crypty almost.
Mm-hmm.
Very Telltale Heart.
I would say,
which is actually one of the stories I read.
Well, so there you go. But on the plus side.
And I got into a fight with a teacher because he didn't understand the meaning behind it. He thought it was literal.
What?
He thought it was literally a heart beating under the
How
floorboards.
The fuck?
And I was like, no, this is guilt, you fool. And I actually took it to the top, to the principal, explained it. This is what it is. He's like, yeah, dude, you're right.
How the fuck? Oh,
we did bad.
We did go to a shitty school, so there's that.
It's true. And the guy's name was Yoshi, so there you go.
Okay. So anyway, yeah, man. You're absolutely right for those reasons, not the relevant ones.
Because Yoshi sucks.
No, yeah, this movie is excellent for all those reasons and many more. But so let's get to the nitty gritty of it. I really enjoyed it, both as a movie on its own and as an adaptation. I will say this before we get into it: it is fiercely loyal to the material. It does take some liberties here and there, but they're mostly to get the points of the material that can't be gotten in the traditional sense across. And there is one big liberty at the end, which we'll discuss when we get there. It coincidentally does tie into your story there. But let's get to that. Okay, so let's start off with the score, because I thought it was ominous.
Yeah,
it was very, very in tune with the mood, and I mean, it just depended. Sometimes we had these sharp, shrilling violin chords, and sometimes we'd just have this drone, and it was always very, very in tune with the gloomy nature of what was going on and the dark.
Yeah, it weirdly, I'm gonna say it's weirdly in tone, I guess, with Gerald's Game. It feels, it kind of feels like these two movies are in the same universe. Weirdly,
Yeah. Well,
because,
they are
because of the music.
Yeah.
Even though Gerald's Game had no music.
Yeah.
When the few times that this movie has music, it kind of feels like it would belong in the same universe. Weirdly, even though there's a lot more of it and there's different. You know, like you said, there's a lot of like strings and shit like that. But yeah, it's really good. I liked it.
Yeah, and
if you want an idea for it, look at the trailer, which gives you a pretty good
feeling.
Feeling for the music.
Yeah, I think what you're insinuating is more along the lines of it fits so well with the material.
Yeah.
That it feels as one.
Yeah,
and since the material's so similar.
The tone that Gerald's Game had is kind of similar, I thought, to the tone this movie has. Yeah. And the music or the sound design kind of helped a lot in that, I guess.
Now, before we get into the more integral parts of it, just a quick reminder to anybody who hasn't seen it. This is a simple morality tale. Yes, it is a period piece, but it's a simple morality tale in the sense that it's trying to say something about something. And as morose as it might get, the message is ultimately positive. And ultimately, the story is about how evil begets evil and how evil will grow. And it cannot be hidden, you know. It's about the curse of evil, if you will. And in that sense, the simplicity of that concept is almost like kind of fucking Old Testament, you know. So the story is very Old Testament, you know. It's just how one man seeking to hold on to something makes somebody complicit in murder, and then what spills out from there. Very simple story, but this all plays into... This wouldn't play out well were it not for the characters and the actors portraying them, so let's talk about that. Anybody that you found out of place? Anybody that stood out in a positive sense? What did you think overall?
Thomas Jane is freaking great. I thought, which is important because he's the main character. If he had sucked, it would have sucked.
This marks his third Stephen King movie, by the way.
Yeah, and only his second good one.
Yeah, he was in the horrible atrocity Dreamcatcher, which we will be reviewing, or talking about, I should say, in this series. And he was also in The Mist. Now this one, and yeah, he was superb, man. He really...
Yeah, this was the most, I think the most... acting he did, I guess, in all the movies.
Yeah,
he's completely different to his actual person or his other characters he's played, and it's really good.
He really got into the character. He adopted the dialect and tones of somebody that would be, a country folk from the Midwest at the time, which was it was awesome, man. It was really awesome to see. I did have a hard time understanding him
sometimes, yeah, but I thought since there's so much dialogue, you kind of get used to it.
Yeah.
And just in the sentence structure, you kind of get what he's saying sometimes. Even though, at first you're like, whoa, this is some heavy accent.
Yeah, it is very jarring, true to that particular time and place, but it is a bit to get used to. I had the benefit of the fact that the movie is very loyal to what is the dialogue in the book. So yeah, but yeah, I'm glad to know that it didn't lose you at any point.
Yeah,
so that's
could see maybe if you play it like on lower volumes, crack the volume on this baby because you're gonna need it.
Absolutely. As for everybody else, I mean, this is a very small cast. It takes place in a farm for the most part.
Yeah.
So you only see people like the sheriff and his neighbor every now and then.
Damien Dark from Legend of Tomorrow is there.
Yeah.
And he wasn't awful, so that's good.
Yeah, I mean, overall the cast was pretty fantastic. No complaints about anyone, really. I do wish one thing. I wish the wife had been portrayed a little bit closer to the book. Not that she strays far from it, but in the book, it kind of makes you feel complicit with him when he murders her, because you really want her to die in the book. And the thing is, she does exactly what she does in the movie. She doesn't really do much other than she's strong-willed and stubborn, and she wants to leave the farm, and he doesn't. and that leads to the murder.
Yeah.
But the way it comes across in the book, she comes across as almost like a nag and almost like a burden, to the point where ingeniously he makes you want the guy to murder her. So you're in his shoes literally the whole time. I didn't feel that she was to that degree, but it didn't take away from the movie for me. Did you feel
it's weird because
about?
I was in the middle. I was like, at first I was like, all right, I get her point.
Mm-hmm. And she most definitely has a point.
But at a certain point, I was like, oh man, just kill her already. Okay. And then I found myself going, oh man, don't kill her.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I thought it was effective in that way, where I was kind of going back and forth. It didn't make her completely hateable, but there was occasional moments where you're like, yeah, okay, I can see why.
It's definitely not to the detriment of the movie, because actually that effect is a lot closer to maybe what you want to feel. You know, you don't want to feel like you want to murder someone. And in the book, it's to the converse. You know, he actually puts you in his shoes so that you really feel that turn of guilt and remorse eventually. But yeah, you're absolutely. It's not to the detriment of the film.
Yeah, and I even think like that feeling I had kind of was played in the movie with his son, where he has a similar kind of feelings. Mm-hmm. So I thought it worked because of that. You don't really want. It makes you feel kind of uneasy about it, you know?
Right. Absolutely, and I agree that does work much better on the screen, if you will. Okay. So all the characters and the actors pretty much come across. I could tell you that they are pretty much mirrors of what they are in the book. Maybe not physically, like the sheriff should have been older and fatter, but who cares? I mean, the part is played out well. Did you feel any suspense or tension? I really got to ask this because it's kind of like at the forefront of my brain. Did you feel any suspense or tension when the sheriff showed up?
No.
No, right?
No.
Okay, it wasn't just me. That is something that I also kind of felt a little lacking, because in the book, when the sheriff shows up and when the lawyer shows up to check up on the missing wife, it's really a tense moment, because you know the danger of them getting caught. And I think it has to do with the fact that he makes you complicit to his feelings.
Yeah.
You know, so you're in the same boots. You want him not to get caught. So the tension is more present in the book than it is in the screen. But again, I think it has to do with that.
I think in the movie it works because it's more like, it's more played as like they get away with it, and then the guilt comes.
Yeah.
You know? So, but yeah, I could see like that would have been kind of neat if there was some tense moments during that. Because there isn't.
Right.
It's just really easy to get. Even with the cop, like even the kid goes, he didn't even check the well.
Yeah.
So, and it works for the time period too.
Yes.
You know?
They say it in the dialogue, which is also in the book, that, at the time, a man's land and wife were his business. And nobody. And that is very clear in the book, and they do mention it there. So it does work out. Yeah. Ultimately.
And the movie takes a focus to, in a different way later on, so I thought it worked. But yeah, that would have been neat to see, I guess.
Okay, so once we get past that, let's move on to the, I guess, the horror set pieces in this, because there's a very morbid tone to it, as aforementioned. It takes like a Tales from the Crypt vibe, so basically the man's guilt is driving him up the walls, right? And then they ride that line between, is this actually happening? Is there an apparition that is torturing him, or is this strictly his guilt type of thing, and they play that out. I thought it was a lot more clear in the movie that this was the man's mind doing this than it was in the book, but the book doesn't shy away from that, it doesn't ever do that. But what did you think? Did you feel one way more than the other, or not?
I thought it was clearly mind thing. Even with the end, that could just be like, oh, he's gonna kill himself or whatever, what I mean? But they do kind of toe the line a little, I guess.
Yeah.
Especially with the rats.
I think the most pressing point, yes, the rats, and that ties into this point, which is also in the book, and I'm very glad they kept it here, because with this particular point that I'm about to mention, it does murk up the waters a little, make you wonder, was there a supernatural element on top of his guilt? And that is the fact that he does know what happened to his son because of what the apparition of his wife whispers to him. And it's the same in the book. He knows before his son comes in the train, his body comes back to him. He knows everything, and he brings that up to question, how did I know this? If this is not happening the way I think it is, how did I know this? So I'm very glad they still portrayed that, and they even kept it a little bit vaguer. They didn't make it as clear. They let the audience decide a lot more in the adaptation. So did you feel the same way, or did you not? Was that always like, but what about this?
I think they do show a couple things in the movie that, because like time is kind of shown really oddly in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Like they do show them being in the newspaper, so there's always that possibility. Maybe he saw a newspaper in town or something.
Right.
But yeah, there is that like unclearness about that. Like, how did he know? And that whole scene of him learning is kind of interesting. And they show all the stuff that's going on with his son really neatly, and that's the way he finds out. So of course, there's always that like maybe there is a supernatural element.
And okay, so with the supernatural elements and the morbid tones, we get some effects, and there are a few effects in this movie, namely the decaying revenant apparition of his wife, and then later some other stuff. There's like some cows die. There's those. Not a lot of effects. It's not effects heavy, but the effects that do come out. Overall impression,
they're good. They worked for the movie.
Yeah, they worked.
This is very getting into nitpick territory, but there was a point where the snow looked fake as shit.
Was it when he was sitting in his, and it was trickling in from the...
No, it was when his son and his chick died.
Oh, yeah, okay.
It just looked like cotton.
Yeah.
But that's like, who cares?
Yeah, I mean, this was a relatively small production, and considering that, and the fact that it's a period piece, everything looks pretty great. Of course, it's cheaper probably to make fake snow on a computer than it is to do the other. But I mean, that's nothing. Like you said, nitpicky territory. Yeah. Other than that, everything looks great.
That's like the only thing I noticed that looked like fake. It's like, oh, snow's fake as shit in this scene. Who cares?
The Revenant's kind of decaying appearance,
It's not overdone. I don't think that his son's face effect was pretty well done, I thought. Yeah, everything was good.
Okay. So we've pretty much... let's talk about the actually, before we get to a wrap-up here, let's talk about the overall aesthetics and visual look of this. Again, this goes in line kind of, I think, with the score in terms of its gloomy, kind of downtrodden, almost constantly overcast nature. There's a lot of darkness implied without there ever really being darkness, which is awesome, I think. So visually, those aesthetics hold up throughout. It's a very gloomy, morose affair.
It's kind of cool because a lot of the movie is not in the dark, like you said.
Yeah, and
so it's actually
implicit in the feeling as well as the visuals, which is odd.
Yeah,
yeah.
And for a horror movie, I wouldn't even call this a horror movie. It is, obviously.
It is by nature of that there being horror in it,
but it's more like it's more character driven, like drama or almost. So like when you do get those like kind of like more horror centric scenes, they kind of come out of nowhere and are more effective.
Yeah.
But I like how the movie looks a lot. I like the shots; they're all very like far. You know what I mean? And everything looks kind of like barren in the world, which is cool. I liked it. I like how it looked a lot.
I agree with you on that. So I think we've agreed that on all points, this movie is a winner. So we're going to call this one a hit, not shit. It's a hit for Stephen King adaptations. So that's good to know because we're kind of on a roll here. The last three, Gerald's Games, It, and this one have been hits. So hopefully this keeps going and we don't sink back to Dark Tower territory.
Oh. Yeah.
But let's wrap it up. Some final thoughts on this thing. What's the haps here? Lay it on me.
It's pretty good. I liked it. If you're expecting a Halloween favorite, as Netflix tagged it, probably not, because it's not. Like I said, it's more like drama-y.
Yeah.
and it's more interesting. Like there's a lot of build up. I had to pause to take a piss in the middle, and it was like was it like 50 minutes in, and nothing spooky had happened.
Yeah.
It was all just like build up, but it's very interesting. Kind of like Gerald's Game. It's very interesting in what's being said.
This is another example of them doing Stephen King justice, not just in the horror sense, but in what Stephen King excels at, which is character. Yeah, and on top of that, they did one even better. They did exactly what Stephen King mostly does, and it shows us that the monsters are not those weird, ugly things, but the people. And I think. Yeah, in that sense, as
and then,
hit that note.
Like ultimately, I actually kind of felt bad for him in the end, which is good because you spent so much time with him. You know what I mean? And I like Thomas Jane.
I think the best the best point where you feel maybe his regret and shame is when he begs to be killed.
Yeah,
but there is no respite. It's until his admission comes with not when he wants it, but when time brings it upon him, and I think that really pushed forward the moral.
From then on, it's kind of like, oh man.
Yeah, it's almost...
He loses his hand, his son's dead, it kind of gets really shitty.
Yeah.
Can't even get rid of his land.
So, yeah, and that, I'll say, is what really, really, really makes me love this movie, is how well it brought the themes of the book to life. You really feel the burden of evil in this, and again, it's not explicit, like a Satanist stabbing someone in the face evil. It's evil that we're all capable of, and how it will just snowball and destroy everything around you. I mean, his neighbors go down, everything decays around him, and it really has nothing to do with any supernatural aspects. It has to do with just that one act that propels him into this out of control scenario. So let's wrap this all up. We both loved it, but let's just put this concluding thing. I told you we were going to talk about it. In the book, the ending is a little different. So if you haven't seen the movie, you probably should have stopped seeing this because there's a lot of spoilers. But in the end in the book, he is writing his confession and he hears the rats and stuff, just like everything. The rats start coming out of the walls, what have you. And then his confession stops because the rats start attacking him, right? And the next page, or the final page in the story, I should say, is a newspaper article that says that this man was found dead in his hotel room, and he had been chewed. He's been found dead, and he had been rotting, so that's why they came into the room because of the smell. And it was a mysterious case because he had bite marks all over him, but they were his own. So it really, really drove home the idea of this man's guilt, just bearing down on him. And I really love that. But I gotta say, I kind of really love this ending in the movie where they make it, again, murkier, They do, that point is driven home. This is clearly his mind projecting this. But then again, when tied into the idea of all that he knew, you still begin to wonder, is there that small element of supernatural there, after all, that's just contributing to his guilt, And the fact that they added his son talking about, I hope God doesn't exist, because if he does, there's a hell, and then we're going there, kind of, that they put that piece of dialogue right there at the end, I think that really cemented that idea, that murky territory. Yes, this guy was guilty, but what if he isn't? And where does he go if he doesn't? And we all know that answer, And I think that was really ingenious. I thought that was really nice that they did that specific way. So if you've read the book and you haven't seen the movie, well, you already know how it's going to end. So spoiler alert, it's not just the rats that come in. It's his wife. It's everybody that he's been had contributed to the death of, and it's implied, end up killing him. But anyway, either way, I thought both endings were amazing. I thought this movie was amazing. You seem to have loved it as well. So it's a hit. Stay tuned for more episodes of Stephen King's Shit or Hit, where two fat fucks decide whether Stephen King adaptation is either or. Till next time, this is Ahab in the Good Tig. Hit like, share, subscribe, and we're out.